the Russian advance on Kyiv has been slowed by Ukrainian forces, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. They say the bulk of Russian forces remain 30 kilometres to the north of Kyiv.
Among those who've taken up arms to defend their country is the leader of the opposition party, Kira Rudik. She tweeted pictures of herself with a rifle, saying she's learning how to use a Kalashnikov and that women will protect Ukrainian soil as well as men. And Kira Rudik joins us now from Kyiv. Good morning to you. I wonder if you could just update us on the situation in Kyiv. We understand from our own defence ministry that Russian forces still remain quite far outside, but we've also heard from two doctors that they have lost friends overnight. What is the situation as you understand it?
Well, we have been under the firearm attacks for the last 5 days. So first of all, it's the air strikes, and they have not been stopped for today. And the second, there were smaller and larger groups of Russian troops that were trying to get into the city. I would say that this night was not that bad. And especially because there was a curfew, so that it was easier to spot any soldiers who were trying to get to the city. And we anticipate that because Putin didn't have any major win during the last 5 days and all the 5 days of war, he will be raising the stakes. And so all the troops that are right now outside of Kyiv will try eventually to get in. That's why we are using this time to prepare ourselves, block the roads, make sure that we have enough of the Molotov cocktail, and people are ready to fight. We will not let Putin's troops in without a fight, and probably will not let them in all in all.
I mean, you are literally prepared to fight because we're hearing that you have got yourself a Kalashnikov and are training yourself how to use that. I mean, that seems extraordinary as a member of parliament. Those are the lengths that you feel that you need to go to.
Yes, well, after Putin declared war on us, there was like only one way to go, is to arm myself and train to protect my family, my city, and my country. So it was pretty obvious to me, though, even 5 or 6 days ago, if you would have asked me, I would tell you, oh, me and firearms? No, 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 no. Right now, the things are different, and we are still processing what happened, but we know for sure that this is what we should do. Men and women in Ukraine, arm ourselves and make sure that we are ready to fight whatever comes.
In what circumstances would you use it?
If I will have to protect my family, or if there will be a major attack on Kyiv and we will have to use everybody who can bear arms. And now I'm the one who can bear arms.
So you're saying if there was a major attack on the ground in Kyiv, you are prepared to go onto the streets with that Kalashnikov and shoot somebody who you think is a threat to you and your country?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. This is what the war means.
Does that not scare you? Do you not feel frightened by that? You've not had any training. You've made this decision, like you said, in the last few days. Are you scared?
I already had the training, so I didn't use those last few days for nothing. So my resistance group and myself, we have been training to use Kalashnikovs. We have been training on what are we going to do. We have ex-soldiers in our group who are helping us to train and helping us to actually be ready and be prepared. Of course, we hope that this will be only the defense piece, but we don't know what is coming, and we should be ready to give the Russian troops a fight so they wouldn't be able to take the city. OK.
Kira Rudik, stay with us. Let's speak to a former British Army officer who served as Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe when Russia annexed Crimea. He also served as Director Special Forces from 2006 to 2009 and Commander Land Forces in 2013. A wealth of experience. How does that make you feel when
General
you hear...
Sir Adrian Bradshaw.
Sorry, General Sir Adrian Bradshaw. How does that make you feel when you hear an MP and we're hearing ordinary people in Ukraine are prepared to take up arms. Is that a sensible move, do you think, for the Ukrainian government?
Well, firstly, one has to express one's admiration and respect for all of the Ukrainian citizens who are currently taking up arms and ready to defend their freedom, and also the members of the Ukrainian armed forces who are fighting a tough battle, a tougher battle than the Russians expected. Yes, ultimately, this may well come down to a tough insurgency battle. The Ukrainian forces are fighting heroically. They've certainly imposed reverses on Russian forces. We're pretty confident that the Russian forces are behind their expected timelines. Putin will have been surprised by this. But ultimately, with the vast superiority of combat power that they've assembled, it is likely that they will defeat the major part of the Ukrainian armed forces, at least in some places. And the fight will have to take to the streets and the woods and become an insurgent battle. And then it's down to every citizen. And, one is full of admiration about the way that they're preparing for it.
How far away do you think we are from that kind of ground battle, insurgents, as you say, people shooting on the streets and in the woods of Ukraine? That feels like a really scary prospect. Do you think we are close to that?
Well, I don't think we're close to it right now. There's a lot more to play. The Ukrainian regular forces are still fighting coherently. They're putting up a tough battle. There's pretty good evidence from Kharkiv that the Russian forces have been somewhat surprised by the resistance, and scenes of young Russian prisoners of war really expressing surprise. They thought they were off on a training exercise. No doubt when they found they were being committed to war, they thought they would be welcomed as liberators, and they're finding it's a very different story. So there'll be a tough fight to come. And as Kira said, Putin will start raising the stakes now, and it is bound to get much more painful and much more damaging. And it's impossible to predict how it will go. All one would say is that, with the odds stacked against them, the Ukrainian regular forces have got a tough fight on their hands. But, to contain and hold a country of 40 million people, it requires a lot of troops if they put up a tough insurgency fight, more than Russia has actually assembled for this.
Kira Rudik, the Foreign Secretary here from the UK government, has said that Britons could independently come to Ukraine, take up arms and act as a sort of foreign fighting force. Of course, because Ukraine's not a member of NATO, there's no official troops being sent to fight on behalf of the country. But what would you say to anybody who heard the Foreign Secretary and thought, right, well, I'll go over to Ukraine and help?
I would just express my admiration and thanks to everybody who is coming to Ukraine to fight now. We have received tons of emails, messages, calls from people from all over the world who understand that the fight that is going on is not just the fight between Ukraine and Russia. It's a fight between democracy and tyranny. And it's like a new step to the new world with a new structure where there will be democratic countries and there will be countries who are really trying to conquer their neighbors. And Ukraine right now acts as a shield to the whole Europe. And we thank to all people who are coming to protect us because we are protecting the whole democratic world right now. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate your help. We always in need of hands and people who are ready to fight, because we understand that the Russian army is one of the strongest ones in the world. And as I like to say, we are right now in David versus Goliath situation in Ukraine. But as a as we are good guys and good guys always win, we are full of hope and full of admiration for the support that we've got from all the countries of the world and from all the citizens who are really, really supporting us. I really want to extend my thanks to the United Kingdom because of all our partners. You have been so helpful and so supportive. And to Tobias Elwood, the head of the Defense Committee from the United Kingdom Parliament, who actually was the first one to support my party's initiative to provide Ukraine with a no-fly zone.
Well, Kira Rudik, thank you for joining us this morning. And, you know, we want everyone to stay safe there. I just want to finish with General Sir Adrian Bradshaw. Is there a point, Sir Adrian, that we do have to officially, militarily intervene? I mean, particularly in the wake of Putin's advice to his, or command to his generals to put nuclear weapons on high alert?
Well, I think we need to be very, very clear about this. Military intervention, direct military intervention into Ukraine by forces from NATO countries would be the quickest way to precipitate effectively a conflict between Russia and NATO. That means the Third World War. We do not want to start that off. We've got to be very clear about this. So we will provide maximum support to Ukraine in all other ways, economically, politically, diplomatically. And in the meantime, we need to prepare NATO for what comes next. If Putin is successful in Ukraine, and that's a big if, because he's made a serious miscalculation, I would assess. But if he is successful, he has made it very clear that he expects the lines to be redrawn according to the old Yalta Agreement, and those nations which are now part of NATO to be reintegrated into the Russian sphere of influence. That is clearly completely unacceptable, and NATO must prepare now to get conventional deterrence in place to make sure that Putin understands that he cannot take a step into NATO territory without being at war with all of us.
And was the Foreign Secretary...
Our deterrence needs to be...
OK, and was the Foreign Secretary wise...
Our deterrence needs to be convincing.
Yeah. Was the Foreign Secretary wise to say she wouldn't oppose people going to support the Ukrainians if they wanted to go and fight?
Well, what private citizens do is clearly up to them. And there's a big difference between private citizens assisting the Ukrainian resistance on the ground and regular forces from NATO nations being directly involved. And could I say a word about the so-called no-fly zone? The practicalities of establishing a no-fly zone over Ukraine to prevent Russian aircraft operating in the skies above Ukraine effectively brings us into direct conflict with Russian forces. And this, again, would precipitate a war between NATO and Russia. So desirable as it might be, it is not practicable. The assistance that NATO nations and the rest of the free world are providing to Ukraine is in the form of very serious economic sanctions, which have really come together recently. A squeeze on Russia's access to their $500 or $600 billion worth of foreign reserves, all sorts of pressure in so many different ways, politically, economically.
Okay.
And it's clear that Putin is feeling the squeeze. OK. All right, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, General Sir Adrian Bradshaw. And thank you as well, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, Kira Rudik. Thanks for joining us this morning.